Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order our Special Education Advisory Committee meeting of November 7th, 2024. We will start with the land acknowledgement. The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississauga of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, live, and learn. This statement was created in partnership with the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation and the Chippewas of Georgina Island. And I'd like to also provide our Indigenous Rights and Human Rights Statement. The Durham District School Board recognizes Indigenous rights are distinct. In the exercise of those rights, Indigenous staff and students shall not be subject to actions with the aim or effect of depriving these distinct rights. The Durham District School Board is committed to providing learning and working environments that center human rights and equity and are safe, welcoming, respectful, equitable, accessible, inclusive, and free from all forms of discrimination, oppression, harassment, and harm. Okay? And we will move on to item number 3, the roll call and our regrets. We have received regrets tonight from Trustee Arsenault, from Rowan Jarvis from the Learning Disabilities Association of Durham Region, Charmaine Brown from the Ontario Parents of Visually Impaired Children, and Trustee Edwards may or may not be able to arrive as she's unfortunately been stuck in a traffic jam due to an accident that's happened, not with her. So hopefully she'll be able to arrive, but right now we have her regrets. So we'll move on to our roll call.
Tar Kelly, Durham Down Civic Association.
Kelly Miller, Trustee Rachel. Elizabeth Daniel, Member at Large. Kim Archer, Principal, Ontario Street. Tracy Running, Principal, O'Neill.
Doug McLaughlin, Sub Honor.
Maurice Bazarian, Autism Ontario Alternate.
Spencer Lynette Burrell, Autism Ontario. Allison Amer, Easter Seals.
Ashley Romano, Transitional Work Experience Coordinator.
Michelle Property, Inclusive Student Service Assistant Aide.
Lisa Rye, Recording Secretary. Andrew McCauley, Superintendent of Inclusive Student Services.
Eva Kyriakis, SEAC Chair in the Association for Bright Children. Okay, we would also like to welcome Ashley as our special guest this evening for our presentation. We'll move on for the approval of the agenda, but before we do that, we would like to add under number 9, business arising from the minutes, the Ability Center membership request. Under that, if everyone is okay with that and the rest of the agenda, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Tara, seconder? Allison, all in favor? Okay, motion passed. All right, then we will move on to the approval of the minutes for October 3rd. Has everybody had a chance to read the minutes? And do you have any questions or concerns with the minutes? No? We were reading the minutes earlier today. There was one little table, which doesn't really matter, but I just picked up on it, so. Sure. Where's my page? Where we was spelled with trees. I used pencils, but I can't see it. Anyway, I'll send it to you. Yeah. If nobody has any questions or concerns with respect to the minutes, can we get a motion to pass the minutes? Sarah, seconders, Elizabeth, all in favor? Okay, motion passed. Just to help out Trustee Miller at the board, is there anything in particular in these minutes that we as SEAC table would like highlighted at the board meeting from the October minutes? For her, to talk about at the board.
I think the presentation was, nice. Augmented, the alternative, the ABC, because that was.
Right,
ABC
yeah.
for this month was October, so
Okay.
that was a fantastic presentation we had. So.
Well, that's good. That
It was really,
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, I know, I was reading it all earlier today, yeah. Yeah, that would definitely be something you want to highlight.
Yeah. So especially because October was so that seems to dovetail nicely.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Does that help?
And I was thinking possibly even maybe of some of the questions that are asked so that when we're talking to the board, it just lets people know, even the audience watching, like what were some of the key questions that came up. I know there was a lot of questions in the room that day and they were very good.
Well, and there are like a list of the questions that in the minutes, so if you could actually pull from that for sure, right? Like how does the process get started and that sort of thing, so I'd pull from that. Anybody else have anything they think they should be highlighted? Yeah. Okay, excellent. All right, then moving on to the staff reports.
Thank you, so I'll start and then I think we'll blend the impact update with the presentation if that's okay, because they flow nicely into each other. So a few things just in terms of the staff report. Earlier today, we circulated a revised flyer in terms of information about psychological services. And so always wanting to be transparent with our families, caregivers, partners, and our school teams. And so a large part of that is the bubble in the middle that gives kind of the 5 buckets of service that psychological services support in the district. So I haven't taken any questions about that and push them through to Sarah if there is that around the table. It blends nicely to our conversation last month about informed consent of our regulated health fields. And so this is now tiled on the board website and we'll be sending it out to schools. Psychological services, along with a couple other teams, support mental health and well-being for students. And we're always looking around the everyday connections, well-being, and foundations through to those that need higher intensity supports. The 3 mental health leaders, so Stephanie Pelmore, who you've met as mental health leader, Carolyn Usher, leading social work services, and Dr. Sarah Schlein, heading psychological services. The 3 of them were taking a look at different affirmation cards around mental health and well-being. And it is difficult to find a set that is a good set in its entirety to go out to schools. So when they were having challenges finding that, the 3 of them wrote a set. And our creative services team have put them together. And so how these have gone out to schools, in each clinical space in each school, we've put a bin of resources. There's a set of cards in that can go out to students. And all of our clinical services, including the child and youth workers, all carry a full set with the intention of giving them out. So what I'd like to do this evening is, this is starting to be a not full set because we keep giving them away, which is important. I'd like to pass them around and I'd like you to pick the one that speaks to you that you might need today and keep that. And so we're really looking at that quality of well-being and connection and everybody getting what they need at any moment of time. So if you pick a card that speaks to you, that would be yours for the meeting. There's a couple working groups that are actively looking at resource development for the system, which we will update SEAC on over the next couple of months. So out of the collective bargaining process, we have a wonderful agreement with our Elementary Teacher Federation for a collaborative working group looking at an individual education plan guide for schools. So what we find is there's some knowledge building in terms of the intentionality of the different sections of the individual education plan and how it builds a story and takes the information about strengths, needs, programming needs, and interests, and then builds into programming goals and strategies. We also heard feedback from the Federation that as teachers move between schools, sometimes the expectations in terms of formatting can be different between schools, and then that creates a challenge. And then we started to think from a parent and caregiver perspective, if you're receiving individual education plans for more than one school, for more than one child, if the formatting's not kind of similar, that can create some dissonance. So we're in the midst of co-writing a guide. Michelle and I both sit directly on that writing team, understanding the importance of that work, and it will be a K-12 document. So we'll bring that here for SEAC once we're through development. There is also a transportation programming working group that is getting started. And so when we look at increasing independence of students in that transition between home and school, we look at those that can kind of self-propel to school. We're trying to figure out how to refer to that other than walk zone. Again, as we tackle ableism as a district, walk zone can land as ableistic for many of our kids. So when we look at walk, roll, run to school, ideal where we can, 70 passenger or 48. Those are the larger buses, depending on elementary bodies or secondary bodies, through to 18 passenger, and some of our students that are independent or need individualized transportation. And then always sitting also between school transportation and community-based transportation. And some of our programs like Ashley works in developing transportation skills. So one of the gaps we realized through conversations, and again, this table has had many conversations around transportation, is where do we explicitly teach kids transportation skills to move them along that continuum of independence as possible and defined for each student. And so there's a working group getting started, led by one of our school administrators with classroom support staff and certs on that to pull resources of where transportation planning is already occurring in classrooms and some of those resources, and then to fill in some of the gaps and get a resource out to the system so that we're supporting our educators in supporting kids in those skills. So stay tuned for both of those. We did have a PD day last Friday in the system. I'm not going to put our principals on the spot, but we do have two principals. The day was principal-led, where school leaders had the opportunity to be with their full staff with encouragement for custodial and clerical staff to also be part of the conversation around items such as achievement planning, well-being, connection. We've released an attendance and engagement support document. Our secondary partners took a look at 30 credits my way, so finding individual pathways for students. And elementary was encouraged to look at their data around which students have modifications and what that does in terms of a fit or needing alignment in terms of student achievement. So modifications for intention of gap closing. Are we actually closing those gaps for students? So taking a look at that. And then this Friday, elementary is in lots of conversations with families and caregivers, and classroom support staff, both elementary and secondary, are in a full day of professional learning. And what we'll do is we'll pull samples of the menu of professional learning opportunities from this Friday and send those out to SEAC and bring you an update next month. What we really want is feedback from inside the sessions. We can have the intention of planning them, but really it's how does it land for the staff that are in the sessions. And we'd just like to thank QP218, our educational assistant bargaining unit. We switch every other year, where management surveys for professional learning needs 1 year. QP does it on the opposite, so that we can get really good data on what are the learning needs that education assistants themselves are bringing forward. And so we have reflected the results of that survey in some of the planning for this Friday. And then on the topic of educational assistants, November 20th is Classroom Support Staff Appreciation Day. So it's always that day that we can take a pause. And our school teams do a really phenomenal job of recognizing the educators that are in the roles of ASL interpreter, intervener, and educational assistant. And then just flagging for SEAC, because we'll do the update with presentation if that's right. Next month, again, we have a busy agenda this evening. We also have a busy agenda for December. Our Board of Trustees heads into their annual organization meeting in the next week or so in terms of the roles of the board. SEAC has its annual election immediately following. So December is our annual meeting for election of the chair and vice chair. So just flagging that for the table, as well as this table had a commitment to do a parent caregiver survey every other year. Our last survey was June 2023, which puts us in a survey year this year. And so I will send out an email after consulting with Eva Terra, as your chair and vice chair, just in terms of, in December, we kind of need to set what you would want the focus of the survey to be so that we can start the development. We'll need to have it finalized by no later than our March meeting in order to roll the communication plan on that. So just wanted to flag a couple of those items coming up so that you have awareness of those will be appearing on the agenda for SCIP. And other than that, we'll leave the impact update because I think Michelle do an intro to Ashton in the presentation. So happy to take any questions.
Yeah, anybody?
That was what?
Allison, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I'm just wondering, Andrew, if you can see the last survey that.
Absolutely.
For those of us who weren't around.
That's a great idea. Happy to do so. Thanks, Allison.
And I would add for the survey that we do have to think about what is it we want, what data do we want, and how do we collect that in the easiest and most concise way, right? So that
Respectful of
and
families.
respectful of families and making sure that it's anonymous data as well. So
Correct. So the last one had a focus on communication in terms of information, and we really narrowed that. And so just in talking with our research department in terms of advice to SEAC, because how do you know that efforts have made a difference if you don't resurvey on some of the same questions to see that analysis? But also, so Chris suggested pulling a couple questions for that measure of impact. And then if you want to stay on the same area of focus, or if you want to add a new area of focus, there is a possibility of balancing those two things. But you would need to narrow the repeating questions in order to make room for the topics. But we will circulate both the survey and the results.
okay, yeah. Yeah, Kelly, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I lost the context. The survey was for
Parents and caregivers
parents and caregivers. Okay, this time. Oh, okay.
to inform SEAC's consultation and actions of staff to improve communications between schools, district, and families, caregivers.
I think if we're gonna circulate that and have a discussion, we should probably make that part of the agenda item.
Want it to be the discussion?
Yeah, we should probably have that next month because it'll be some discussion for sure.
Yeah, question.
Kelly, go ahead.
And me and Andrew will, is there a separate time or opportunity where, when it comes to like the site services and access, is there a time where the students can give feedback? I know we did do something like that already, but just, I know there's research coming out, but just on interior-wide assessment of like what students are saying about the access and how they're engaging with the services and but I just want to know from the DDSB, because I think those pieces are important, like what students feel in terms of how they go about accessing the services that are offered.
Absolutely. So I'll give a tip to it and then we'll go back with our site services team, because I think for each of the regulated health teams, social work, psychological services, and speech language, they create through informed consent a plan of care for their services. So what they're going to work on together with the student and what will they know at the end of that pairing, and then that's either renewed or the goal has been met. And they do embed some feedback questions at that point in time in terms of their service, in addition to how they practice is check-ins with the student around meeting their needs. We also do kind of exit surveys. Both psych and social work have started doing group sessions, such as the Black Excellence Made Evident that's come here before as a presentation. And there's a large part of feedback from the students, and we see that inform the next year. For example, for Be Me, we were running it in sessions over weeks, and the student feedback was, can you give us 2 consolidated days and let us focus in that space? And so that was reflected in that work. So curious about the survey provincially and how the team is using it, so we'll take that question back, but we're not in absence of feedback from students and families. But I think there's always more to learn from them in terms of what we do. So we'll take that back to Sarah and Ursula and the leadership of that team.
Good. Any other questions? No? Okay, then we'll move on then to I guess the staff report. We did the board report.
Okay. So everyone, I'm bringing the board report for the planning committee meeting for November 4th. And so there were a few presentations and memos. I'm not going to go in exact order, but there was the memo for the EQAO results that was presented to us. This remember who the superintendent was, but the EQAO results, we had a big discussions and questions regarding the results and some of the improvements. I don't have the data on me, well, actually, okay, so I will get into all of those details, but I would advise you to look at the full report. It's on our DDSB website where you can look at the numbers. There are they did see some changes, increases, like improvements in the lower grades. The elementary level for math, there was some increases there, and they did see some numbers a bit declining when it came to literacy and reading. And there's definitely implications for what different approaches that they're already doing in DDSB to improve and continually improve early reading. So that would include early, I forgot the word, it's not testing, but early assess screening. Yes, those are really important. And also to what did come about, which is interesting to learn, is that because our board and our area is increasing in they did mention newcomer and language barriers. So sometimes it's the language differences and then students coming from non-speaking language, not English speaking learners. So some of the numbers were a variety of different changes in terms of the dip in the numbers that we saw this year's results. Okay, so then there's also the updated math achievement plan that was presented by Superintendent Mead, I think. There was also the presentation on experiential learning. We had, and I'm going to ask Donna if she wants to add any points after, and she's really, really good in that. There was the Ignite Durham Learning Foundation update, which was very good to see that the Ignite Durham Foundation has provided a lot of support in terms of providing food and for families to get their needs met. Also clothing, we have a lot of needs in our region, so it's growing, and we're encouraging people to drop by the donation sites, or even online. You can actually donate by purchasing some of the Amazon items, but it's really, really needed. Also, there was the food and nutrition memo for supports in schools. That's something that, as a board, we also want to see increasing for schools to have a school program. A food program in schools, and there's also the DDSB participation in the Skills Frontier competition. So some of the interesting things from that was the initial launch. Since the initial launch in 2018, there has been an increase from 12 participating schools to 89 schools. Based off of that meeting, the feedback and the presentation was really great. So our students are getting involved. They really enjoy the STEM kids. It allows the STEM program, and it also allows the students to participate in different activities that they might not have had exposure to. There also are peer-reviewed community organizations that expose them to some of the different types of STEM materials. So it got their feedback, and they would like to see more response for that. So I will end there. If there's any questions, and Donna can speak to any other topics. So no. All right. So if there's any questions, but again, you can find that exact the details for those memos and the presentations on the website if you have any specific questions. And that concludes my report.
Any questions with respect to the board report? We're going to send they're going to send the links out to everybody to that stuff so that you guys can easily access. So I'll go down and find it. Okay. And that as well as the donation links. So send out the link to the donation thing as well. I guess we'll also have the information for the donations drop offs if people wanted to do that as well. Okay. Any questions? No? Okay. Then we will move on to the presentation and discussion around integrated transition planning.
Okay, thank you. I'm here with my amazing colleague, Ashley Romano. I want to start off by saying that we did have the Light Beyond High School event on October 23rd, and it was phenomenally attended. Great work by both Ashley and Braden and the whole ISS team. So tonight we're here. I'll start off with the impact statement, and then Ashley will go into her presentation on transition. So the impact statement is part of ISS's commitment to the multi-year strategic plan. Transition planning begins at the age of 14 for youth with developmental and or intellectual disabilities, and early planning is key. It's a joint effort of support and care for, with students and families and caregivers. So Ashley's going to lead you through the tool and the package, so if you can have that as your reference, that'd be great. And where do you want to start? Sure. Donna, what's coming to you, okay? Okay. You're going for event guides.
Yeah,
so this is.
Yes,
What
so,
are they attend?
yes, you'll find two event guides, so one for yourself and then you have a copy to give out. We also have it available digitally, so we can share that as well. So a little bit about integrated transition planning. It is a combined effort between school teams to connect with families on the day-to-day and share information on the different services. They get consent from parents, caregivers, and guardians to access the Inclusive Student Services team. And on that team, a big player is psych services. So I did want to read out some numbers in terms of how many assessments are provided or requested in support of DSO applications. DSO is Developmental Services Ontario, which is the access point for adult services in Ontario through MCCSS. So in the 2023-24 school year, there were 27 referrals for assessments for DSO, and in 2024-25, so this current school year, there have been 81 referrals for assessments in support of the DSO application. So you can see that the need is there. And then there's also the transition coordinator team, which is myself and my colleague Braden. Last year, we received 181 new transition coordinator services referrals. And throughout the school year and throughout the summer as well, we maintain relationships with over 50 agencies and service providers in Durham Region and Ontario. And that number continues to grow as we find and are made aware of more and more community services and programs that our families can access. So this fall, the transition coordinator team, along with Michelle, we went out to all the secondary schools, meeting with the admin, the Inclusive Student Service and Guidance department heads to refresh and reshare the role of transition coordinators, and also to roll out some resources in support of effective transition planning. So within our school teams, we have a Google Classroom where we share resources from community partners directly with teachers that teachers can then share with their students as they see it's appropriate. And we also have created a transition planning OneNote that teachers or school staff, admin, guidance, anyone on the school team can access in support of transition planning. And that intention of the OneNote is to provide the how and the why, whereas the intention of the Google Classroom is to actually provide direct access to services and information that's what's going on in the community. So this leads me to this guide that you have. It's the Life Beyond High School Transition Planning Getting Started resource. So it's the one with the staple in the top left corner. So if you open to page 2 and page 3, so these pages here, I'd like to draw attention to these pages just to begin. So page 2, this page we felt was really important because it works to outline post-secondary pathways for students with developmental and intellectual disabilities, and examples of what these pathways might look like. One thing we want students and for families as well to understand is that these pathways are fluid, and just because you're exploring one does not mean that it does not intersect into another pathway. And we wanted to provide families with tangible examples of what that might look like. So we're actually under discussion of having it change from the hierarchy list into more of a circle so that families understand that fluidity of the pathways. And again, this is really important because we do meet with a lot of families that they don't know what life after high school looks like. They haven't thought about life after, that regimented, 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock or whatever the school hours might look like. So we really thought this was an important piece.
Page 3, this page is a very important one, and we're excited about this page because this provides a transition pathway at a glance. So this is sort of an overview of all key transitional milestones for students with developmental or intellectual disabilities. Starting integrated transition planning early is so important as there are wait lists and wait times for services, for funding, and families really can be caught off guard by this. So if we're able to kind of start planning early, it makes it a little bit easier. That's why our checklist starts at 14 years old, right when they enter high school. The exciting piece is that this page, we actually plan to have it printed in poster size format and available in all of our small class placements to have up on our walls, as well as our ISS offices. Guidance could have it in their office, admin could have it in their office. We really want to increase the knowledge of this, and there should be no confusion or shock to families, and really kind of fill a gap that has sort of existed in the past. So we're really excited about that. And what we have here, which I would like to draw attention to, is general considerations as well. So these aren't tied to any specific age, but they're important throughout the checklist or throughout the transition period to make sure, you're accessing everything that's available to you. We are quite excited about this, or I am. They all are. The next step for this resource will be making it available online and involving some interactive pieces, so families can actually use this as a checklist item to go through and make sure they're on track with these transition milestones. So throughout the rest of the document, this is my copy, so there's some notes on here, but it provides the why, the what, why, who, when, and how of most of these transition milestones. So we're really trying to increase families' understanding, but not only does this work to support families, this also supports school teams so that they're all sharing the correct information. Because sometimes misinformation can get out there, and then it leaves families in a tough spot if they have information that was maybe outdated or misinformed. So that's sort of what the guide is intended to be. And then complementary to this resource is the Life Beyond High School event guide, which you also have a copy of. There's 2 copies, one for yourself and one to share. As I said, we will be making it available online. So these really should work together in transition planning. So you have the why and the how, and now you have a list of resources in your region. This is not a fully exhaustive list. This is a list of community partners that attended our Life Beyond High School event, which we can make a note of that, so families understand that it's not everything that's out there, but it's a good chunk of what's available in the community. So the idea is that between these 2 resources, families will have a better idea of how they can make those visions come to life. We're launching it today. That's my notes. So I open up to any questions or comments on these documents.
I would like to say, please note that it's still in draft form. We are going to do some, as Ashley said, especially on page 2, I think it was, we're looking at changing the visual. I think it's important to change the visual. So this is a draft format, and we're hoping to get it finalized within the next week.
Thank you. I just have a quick question, Ashley. Am I right that in assuming that these are hyperlinks in a digital version?
Yes.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it from the perspective of an immigrant who might not know those acronyms or how to go about. So that's great. And this document is terrific. Kudos to you and your teams. It's really, really good.
Yeah, we did edit this document to kind of condense it and give families an idea of what services are offered. And we added QR codes, which is new this year. So some families know how to use QR codes, some do not, but it's there regardless. The website link is also there listed for families, as well as email and phone number if they're available.
Any other questions? With respect to this? I'm just curious as to the increase in numbers, do you think that's due to the awareness of the transition team or the growth of the board? Or both?
Well, I will say that, I think part of it is due to, families realizing that it's available to them and wanting to utilize supports that the school can offer, especially knowing that after high school, that sort of one-on-one approach that we take with students it does exist, but it might not be as easily accessible as it is before. I do think another piece is that the system for referrals is new. And so we did sort of tighten up on there needs to be a referral in place to meet with families. So I do think that had a component to it, which I think is important because we're more accurately seeing how many students we're serving. But yeah, I think it's twofold.
It's twofold. Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. Sorry, Donna, go ahead.
I'm just wondering because one of the things that the Durham Region Transit says that they do have is that they have a course that they actually support people and I just didn't know because this is another thing of one of the pathways that they do is being able to understand and how to do it as well as then part of getting the pass for. I just like I don't really see it part, but it really is key for moving.
Yeah. I do have it included in the guide. It's under the 18 to 21 year old on page 9. Explore transit services through Durham Transit, and within there we have information on the transit assistance program, which through ODSP they get a reduced rate, the support person card, the specialized services. We kind of blanketed the transit services under the begin planning support services needed for life after high school. Learning about transit services, and then when they go to that section, but we could definitely include more specifically the transit regarding what supports it.
Yeah, because I just kind of think that it's not necessarily also after, because if you have students that, basically are at this point in time as part of their transition planning, if they go co-op or something else, there's that opportunity as well. So I'm thinking there might be a little earlier that you might want to look at some of that as well, to basically, give them independence if they're able to.
Yeah, I think it's we could definitely look at including it earlier. The one reason that we did keep it for when we were kind of brainstorming this document is a lot of families look at the specialized services application, which is the door-to-door service that Durham Region Transit offers, which you typically have to be connected with a day program service to receive specialized services. But in terms of the transit like the support person card, we could include that at any point. The specialized services application, they sort of encourage to wait. So I think we could spread it out throughout the document. So you're right, families aren't waiting until 21 to learn that they could have been supporting their student for free through the support person card.
Yeah,
and a lot of our teachers, I will say, do share that form when they go on like for field trips or for work education. So a lot of our students are actually filling out those support card applications before they even leave school.
I would like to say that, as you can tell by Ashley, she's very knowledgeable and very enthusiastic. And she also really went out there, not only with our community partners, but to our schools over and over and over again, and really informing them about transition planning. And I think that was imperative. I have been a part of Light Beyond High School for the last couple of years, and the numbers were astronomical this time, and it's really credit to Ashley's leadership and Braden as well. So
I did attend the event briefly, and I was great here at the start, and it was just already very, very busy as far as that goes.
Oh, that's the other thing that's really, really important to note is that we did notice families are coming younger, which is an indication that the message is getting out. That's one of the things that we did fundamentally this time. We saw a lot of great young families. So that was great news. And we also, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
We also had a lot of, interestingly, we had a lot of families from other boards that came. just to see what Durham had to offer. So that was a really nice piece as well. News to know. So, yeah.
Good on the board, right? Kelly, you
I'll
have a
get
question?
ask me a question, because I'm not, it was just regarding, legal, and just because I know that sometimes, past post high school, there's some, issues sometimes for students that are applying for, like bursaries or financial support if they're going to secondary, they're going to post-secondary, institutions. And so it's just like things that they need to know, like what they can provide, what they don't need to provide, and just what, still qualifies under their need, right? Because there's a lot of different changes, and I've seen that a few times. So I just was wondering about that, but I can ask that possible.
So one of the things that when we visited high schools, we wanted to make a distinction between the work that our transition coordinators do and also the work of how ISS can support the guidance department, right? And we did provide within the Google Classroom some links to be able to support the guidance department in terms of looking at different pathways at post-secondary, so college, university, combination of the two, and accessibility, because each of our university partners offers something different in terms of different forms. So we have really encouraged our guidance departments to, when they're supporting their students that are supported through an IEP, to when they go to tour the university or college, also make sure that they are touring the accessibility center and department, because they're all a little different. But we have provided some guidance and direction to guidance and to the ISS heads at each of our high schools in terms of how to support their students.
And we did share resources with student success on what they could include in their next iteration of the useful pathways book. I have 30 credits my way. So there is going to be a bigger emphasis on how students can access accommodations and kind of the know-how. We do have a connection with the Transition Resource Guide for Students with Disabilities, which is an amazing website for students that are heading to post-secondary. So we've built that relationship in hopes that we stay up to date on what's being shared, and then we can align the messaging. But yes, as Michelle said, we've kind of handed that softly, sharing the responsibility with guidance.
Anybody else have any questions?
Sorry.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I forgot to add, so we did present this at the AC meeting, and there was feedback to ensure that the document is sensitive to Indigenous students' culture and experience. So we are looking into any additions. From where it stands right now, the services that students with intellectual and developmental disabilities would remain the same as what's already in the guide, but we will be hearing from the advisory circle at their meeting in December. I forget the date, so if there's any additions, it might come from that as well. So that was the other feedback we received.
Anybody else have a question? I have one more. The community, the organizations that you referred to in here, have you consulted with them as well with respect to the package?
Yes, sorry, I forgot to mention, we met with 2 organizations. We met with Community Living, Ajax Pickering Whitby, and Participation House, which is serves Durham region. Both agencies do a little bit of everything in terms of those pathways. So their feedback actually was to include some information on page 11 and 12. So home and living situations. It's not the position of the school board to tell families what home and living will look like after high school, but to share information so that they realize that it's a part of the planning, and then have some links to quick resources that are shared through the government. And then the legal considerations are, the community has told us is a hot topic for our adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So again, it's not our intention to feed them in any way, but just to know that they have resources that they can review. And these are the resources that are funded through the government and widely accessed on all platforms.
Great.
So yeah, that was the feedback that we received.
Any other questions?
Just a random question about this. Is there anything like even for Ontario, like visual representation for some of these like whole, like the living situations, or just like what to expect? Does anybody know? I was just curious if there's any, like videos from Ontario, like regarding this.
Not Ontario specifically. Partners for Planning is a resource that we often share with families. It's in the document. They have a place to call home housing resources in which they showcase various, living situations. So that's a one to consider. Connectability is a great resource online. They have lots of different options, but I would imagine there's videos on there. And Imagining Home meetings offered by the Durham Association for Family Resources and Support. It's a live meeting where families can actually get together and talk about housing and planning long term. And they did just let me know that they're coming out with more videos. So it seems to be a popular platform to share information, which I think is great because it's easy to access, as long as they're done, accessibly, of course. But so there is various ways to kind of learn some more, and these links are typically the ones that are shared. These are the links actually shared by DSO, so that's why we've shared them as well.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
I have just actually one more thing.
Yeah.
Just around the transition planning, I don't know if the board still has, we had a transition committee or a committee that brought all those associations around the table.
Advisory group. Okay.
Sorry?
Transition advisory group.
Yeah, and it had all of these different community organizations that sort of sit together. Does that still exist?
It exists. It is on standby currently. I think with the turnover and trying to cover a different position, there was, and then COVID, of course, things were sort of intended that people were going to start uploading their resources independent of actually having a meeting, which we have found has not been the most successful. So the most successful is just getting updates from agencies.
Okay.
But it is something we're looking at returning and making more.
When we last met, it turns more into round robin sharing of information that could be disseminated electronically. And so when you're calling together individuals in that many roles and that many organizations, really making sure that a Connect is focused on service feedback and moving services forward for families rather than round robin sharing of information. So I think that's part of the redesign is the table grappling with how to ensure that there is immense value coming from the commitment to be physically present with each other to look at resources and services.
Sure, fair enough. The reason I was asking that is when that committee existed, there was a SEAC rep who sat on that committee. And if that comes back, that's something that maybe we should be, having them see that if it comes back to that.
Yeah. I think it's a great, I think it's definitely our priority, especially with the journey to belonging reform that's happening and the changes in the service industry. We do need to be more in touch with what the ministry is putting out to the developmental agencies. So it's definitely a priority of ours, and we're working on the logistics of it. But yes, we'll definitely include the SEAC here.
Okay, excellent. Yeah,
Just another comment, because I know I know you mentioned and as I said, it's not up to us to sort of, as far as living arrangement stuff, but one of the biggest things is that there we have microboards. And there's a whole slew of information around microboards. And,
Yes.
I know some that you've listed there talk a little bit about microboards, but yeah.
Yeah. But I had included microboards under the legal considerations through Partners for Planning. It's under their legal and estate planning resources. Microboards are not new, but becoming more popular. So there's still, with anything on here, there's mixed opinions. So it's on there, but it's one of those like, here's some info, check it out for yourself sort of deal. Because it's not for everybody, but it's a great option for families to consider as transition planning. Like, it's not just this transition, there are multiple transitions after high school that families need to plan for and safeguard futures of their loved ones. So we do have it.
Yeah, no, I noticed that as far as connectability is there, so like, you know, but there are some other resources that are around that other organizations that offer sessions around like
Yeah.
boards as well, so.
Yeah, and we do share like updates on webinars and like free opportunities for families to have learning about these topics through the Google Classroom if teachers are sharing them with families. And we're working on strategies to get it directly to the families, but we're not quite there yet. But we will have a strategy to get stuff right to families for these important topics. So that's thanks.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. That was really informative and it's great. I know from people who I'm close to who had to go through this process, how important that planning is ahead of time, well in advance. So the fact that the board has a team that's helping parents walk through that is fantastic because it can be very, very overwhelming for the parents, for sure.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Okay. We are going to move on then to the business arriving from the minutes. And first item would be the parent involvement committee representative. And I know the surveys went around, and it sounds like Jennifer McLaughlin is our new representative for SEAC. Thank you, Jennifer, for your time. Appreciate it. The next one was the webinar update. Now, I wasn't here for the last one, but we did have one for a planning committee, like another survey for a planning committee. And Jennifer's put her name forward, Charmaine, and myself. So that's great. We got a little bit of a sub-planning committee, and maybe we'll send an email and connect that way and figure out a time to sit down and really sort of start hashing things out. That's kind of the first step. So that makes me happy. And then our member at large subcommittee got together to review the applications for the member at large. And the first thing I'd like to say is thank you to everybody that had put their application forward. We had a number to go through, and the decision is never easy. Some of the things we look at is what voice do we already have around the table? What voices maybe we're missing, like if something can be brought new or different to the table that we already have. So in going through them, we reviewed one, right now I'll just refer to them as JW. Well, they have children with special education needs, which I think has brought a lot of people to this table for the different associations because we're connected. They also are employed as a communicative disorders assistant, and they do speech therapy in a remote flying community about 500 kilometers north of Thunder Bay. So we thought that brought something, sort of very interesting to the table. So that is the person that we ultimately landed on after much discussion. And Michelle knows she was sitting there waiting for us to go through it, but we went through them and had, sort of a very rigorous sort of discussion on what people brought to the table and what we thought would be the best choice. It's never an easy decision. So we are looking to put that person forward. And I guess once we have a motion to approve to put forward the name of the person that the committee selected, we'll say who that is, and then do a motion to request that the board approve that person as a member at large. Okay. So basically we need a motion first off, anybody have any questions about the person we selected and sort of the process and why we chose the person that we did? No? Okay. Sorry? We trust you. Right, that's what that. Can we get then a motion to, accept the nomination of the committee and request that the board put that nomination through for approval at the board? Tara? Sure. Seconders?
I was on
It's
Phyllis.
Okay. All in favor? Okay, motion is passed. So you're gonna ask a question, Helen?
No, I got it now, just trying to make, just connecting the pieces. of what
Connecting
we
the
did
pieces,
before, yeah.
okay. So, now that we have, now that we have approved the decision of the committee, we can say the name, and that is Jessica Wells. So, if you could please ask. I think that was part of the motion I just made to put that name forward. That's the name we're putting forward.
Through you,
Yes.
we will reach out, on behalf of SEAC, to notify, the other applicants as well and appreciate their, interest in the work of SEAC and the importance of advocacy for students. We'll reach out on behalf of SEAC, with you as chair to Jessica to let her know that, the nomination is going forward for, approval to our board of trustees. Just with the timing of the board meeting and next SEAC, just so that if approved, Jessica's ready to join the table. And then we'll be in contact, with Jillian to ensure that there's a motion page within the appropriate agenda package.
Okay. All right, and yes.
One more thing for 9. Those of you who are on these slides.
Oh, yes.
So I'm like my principal, I'm just gonna go. So I had a wonderful conversation, with my relatively new principal. He just came in sort of late last year. And he is very much, on board, and he wants to actually hold this month. He and I have been talking for about a month or so. He wants to, what he's calling a listening session. He wants to get feedback from the parents and in the community about specific services and this, for our inclusive students, how we're doing, and talking through all those things. And I thought that this might dovetail very nicely in terms of our webinar series that we're trying to put together, because once I had mentioned that I sit on SEAC, say, well, we're going to be best friends, and sort of talking through that. So I'm actually going to go there on behalf of SEAC, if everyone's okay with that, more the merrier, if anyone wants to come, I'd be super okay with that. That we're gonna be talking about sort of like the whole concept of advocacy and those sorts of things. And then what SEAC, so again, raising the profile for us, that we're all here for the support for parents, but primarily for Mr. Wrigley is, he wants to know how we're doing in the school and, you know, what's working well, what's not working well. And I was hoping to kind of dovetail that along with parent survey, because a lot of stuff we were talking about was communication. We found a lot of our big issues was communication, establishing that trust and that relationship, and then building that team around the child and sort of centering it there. So I thought this could be a really great way of talking through some of those concepts that I could funnel into you guys for the webinar stuff. If there's specific stuff, there are common themes that keep coming up and stuff like that, just as more information to kind of like feed the machine, as sort of what I was thinking that I could do that. So the goal is we're gonna host it on the 20th of November. What day is that? I don't even know anymore. It's a Wednesday. It's a Wednesday, 6:30. I think we're doing, and it's gonna be at Lakeside Public in the library. It is. Excellent. Yes, so it'd be Support Staff Appreciation Day, so I will mention that as well. So I think I have about a 5-minute blurb to say what SEAC is and just kind of get that out there. I don't have numbers yet for how long it's gonna be intended at this point, but we're willing to test and learn as we go. So if anybody wants to join in the fun, let me know, send me an email, and we can round, so the more the merrier, so.
Yeah, I mean, we all represent different associations, right?
Exactly,
So
different lenses are always
different parents might
appreciated.
have questions for different people,
Mhm.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
So I thought that might be another way of putting more information. to you guys.
I am always very excited about any opportunity to talk about SEAC and what SEAC does. And when my kids were in this Durham school board system, I took the opportunity many times at SEAC meeting, or at SEC meetings to talk about SEAC and what we do, because a lot of people don't know, right? So if, you have that ability to take the time and just have that conversation, it's amazing how many people then go, oh, I didn't know there was this thing to reach out to, including teachers too, right? Like, staff and stuff. So I think it's an excellent one. And then of course we added to, before I move on, is there any other questions with respect to what Tara's doing? And if you're interested in joining her, send me an email, send her an email. Yeah, or tell her whatever after the meeting. The other item arising from the minutes was the request from the Ability Center for a membership. And there's a couple of things, because it's not a parents association. So if you look at the regulations, and we've had this question come up recently from another community organization, sort of service provider, about sitting at the SEAC table. And we can have service providers as long as there's space, as non-voting members. But the regulation is clear on the associations, that it has to be a parent association. We have stayed away for, like having voting members fee for service, because the voice is really intended to be, sort of family and parent, a caregiver type voice, which is what these associations that so, I mean, the Ability Center, having the Ability Center sit at the table, if it's the Willow SEAC as a non-voting member, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. They would need an alternate. But if it's the Willow SEAC, we can, reach out to the Ability Center and offer them a non-voting seat at the table. I know we've had the organization, they haven't had a member for quite some time sitting at the table, and we've been holding a spot over for that, for the early childcare. Oh, correct. Right? They haven't had a representative for that for quite some time, but we could reach out to the Ability Center and offer them a non-voting seat at the table if they want to put forward an alternate as well as their main person. It would also need to go to board. And it would need to go to board as well. Yeah. So, so
We haven't inquired about the provision of it.
Sorry, it is needed?
We have asked the Ability Center for an alternate.
For an alternate, okay. So if it's, I don't know, anybody want to make a motion to suggest that the Ability Center, to offer the Ability Center a non-voting seat at the table, that we bring that to board.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Before we do that? When you said provided that there's space around the table, is there a definition of space around?
Yeah, go ahead.
So within the Education Act, the regulation on SEACs sets the number of associations that can be around the table. We are amply able to offer a non-voting seat without creating a barrier for other parent organizations that may want to come forward at this time.
Just sort of like comment, like ages ago, we had resources for second children youth, we had kindergarten sitting around the table, all sorts of different associations as well on non-voting spaces.
Yeah.
So it's not unheard of, sort of thing. So it is
I'm not sure we need to make a motion to offer them, or just suggest that they put it through.
You could motion that and put it forward upon receipt of,
Yeah, okay, yeah.
and then we're ready to go with May.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have many non-voting members around the table currently. Like, obviously, we wouldn't want to fill up the vast majority of our spots with non-voting members, but we have lots of space, so there's no reason we can't offer.
Well, if they want to put that forward, we haven't received that. Okay, it has been suggested that we consider that. So,
How many spaces do we have?
that would be good.
I have that.
Right. And that, okay, fair. Yeah, but currently do we? I don't think we have any right now, outside of the early childcare care.
And they have a child care consortium that has safety not so long.
Yeah, and they haven't had, they haven't had a rep, so I'm not sure if how long we keep that open if they don't provide a rep, right? Because it seems like we could be taking the space away from a community organization who may actually put a rep for it.
At this point, it's not a pressure point, and
Yeah.
SEAC would be able to.
Make that choice.
Yeah.
Okay, so, does anybody want to make a motion to, you let, the Ability Center know that upon receipt of an application for a non-voting spot on SEAC, at the SEAC table, that we would put that through to the board for approval?
I'll make that.
Allison, okay, seconders? Elizabeth, all in favor? Okay. Excellent, okay, so that, I think, is the last of our business arising from the minutes, and then we're going to move on to the association reports with the Durham Down Syndrome presentation. Hello.
Thank you. Down syndrome, so hello, Tara Kelly, the rep for Old Brittle Syndrome. I think I was 6 when I started, so 12-ish plus years. So, so just wanted to provide a little bit of information about Windsor. I also have a very, very amazing expert sitting directly to my left. So, Donna, please fill in anything else that you would like to add if anything else shows up for you. Just move to the next one.
Alice got it.
Oh, Allie, thank you.
Okay, my pleasure. Do you want to go to the next slide?
Yes, please, Ali.
It's just really quick with sort of history. The Durham Down Syndrome Association was started in 1983, and has been sort of going through motions ever since then. And right now we're supporting about 90 families within the Durham region. And we're really sort of that support system within the community, providing fundraising and activities for the members across the varying ages. We have littles all the way through. I met people that I am still friends with, and my son is still friends with, when all of the babies were 6 months old. So, we've done through those sorts of things. They're kind of part of a larger sort of hierarchy. Per the way we go, we have the Down Syndrome Association of Ontario, DSAO. There's also the Canadian Down Syndrome Society as well. And just sort of on Down syndrome itself, World Down Syndrome Day was designated by the United Nations back in 2012 as the 21st day of March and is recognized internationally annually. We'll find out why it's March 21st. So the vision for the Durham Down Syndrome Association is to continue to build a supportive, inclusive community by providing social and active events for people with Down syndrome and their families. So actually, the 30th of November this month, we are having our annual Christmas party. There's for the young ones, there is a day party, and that usually has an early appearance. And in the evening for our teens and adults, we actually have a dance, and they shut it down. So they have a great time with that. So our vision basically is to continue that support, to provide a supporting and welcoming community, and make sure that people have access to that. So there's always that community of there's someone like me, and that I know that the support with parents as well is really important, especially for anyone that's new to the world of Down syndrome. You know how frightening it can be when you don't really know what you're in for. But when you have this community of people who've been there, done that, and worn out the t-shirt 44 times, it's really helpful to have that support system and that network in there for someone that's been through the exact same things you're trying to go through. On to the next.
So just a little bit of science for everybody. So what actually is Down syndrome?
So it is a genetic condition. Typical human has normal 46 chromosomes. They're arranged in 23 pairs. But people with Down syndrome have 47. So I don't know if you've seen the "Don't have, keep calm" t-shirts. So one of the best ones that I've seen, keep calm. It's an extra chromosome. The other one is my kid has more chromosomes than yours. There's another lovely saying. I love doing that. So there's actually sort of 3 different sort of types. I'm going to say the most typical way that this manifests is the extra chromosome sits on that 21st pair. So hence the actual medical diagnosis term for Down syndrome is trisomy 21. So 3 on the 21st pair. Hence, that is why on the 21st March, the 3rd month, on the 21st day is World Down Syndrome Day. The other 2, and that one's like about 95% of anyone diagnosed with Down syndrome is typically with that standard. There's a standard trisomy 21. The other 2 are called translocation and a mosaic. So translocation is sometimes that extra chromosome that slides over to a different chromosome. I think the most typical one is like the 14th pair, so that you'll have an extra chromosome on the 14th pair and not the 21st pair. And the mosaic is the really weird guy. It's still sort of like sitting on the 21st pair, but the cells in your body, some of them will have 3 chromosomes and some of them will have 2 chromosomes. So now you get this very sort of mixed mosaic view of the world, so your body really just doesn't know what's going on. So that's kind of is how that happens. Typical, if you meet a child with Down syndrome and you have that one child with one Down syndrome, it is very typical that it is like a spectrum. Sort of, you have many different types of impacts that this can have, and in varying degrees. So physical issues and the heart defects, I think it's about half, between 50-60% of all children are born with Down syndrome usually have an associated heart defect that may require surgery. My son actually did have a heart defect, but it was a very tiny hole in his heart, and it resolved on its own. It did not require surgery, but it was sort of typical. It's not everyone has the same level of severity, so you get that. Speech and language delay is very typical. In a lot of cases, you'll have their tongue is overly large for their mouth, which allows and basically trying to talk with a mouthful of crackers in your mouth, sort of thing. You have very garbled speech and that sort of thing. Hypotonia, also low muscle tone. So everything is harder to do. So think of constantly being able to having to figure out how to work your muscles, and everything just takes longer to do everything. My son's very typical way of going up the stairs is sort of like that one step. It's a very deliberate, very slow, very measured way of doing things. So generally you tend to have slower reaction times, all those sorts of things. Which he can't play dodgeball even though he really wants to, but he won't be able to. And then you get the associated cognitive delays. We have children who are nonverbal, and there are children who are very articulate. You've sort of seen, so in the communities, you've seen one girl who is a model for Gucci. You've got folks who are actors. You have folks like Victoria, who comes out and does all sorts of presentations across the school board. And they're very articulate and able to carry on interactive conversations. And then you have children who are still working with an augmented communication device because they are not capable of speech at that point. My son learned to talk. We started with more milk, I think with sign language and that sort of thing, until he was actually able to speak. So he does have speech, but it is garbled. So you have to get him to slow down so then he can form the words a little bit better and that sort of thing. But that's kind of the typicals that you've got. You'll have other issues, children with issues, especially with their legs and their knees and their hips all developing. So a lot of them will wear supportive braces on their legs and ankles and all that sort of stuff. So it's a myriad and a spectrum of what you can have there with children. So therefore you have a myriad of different supports: OT, PT, speech and language, psych assessments as you get further going through and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Thanks, Ellie. Resources. This is sort of the list of what we've got there. I did also put down the World Down Syndrome Day org. There's usually a lot of really fun stuff that happens on that day on March 21st. So I super encourage you to go take a look at that. One of the biggest ones that we do is sort of the lots of socks sort of initiatives. That's the idea of wearing mismatched socks on the day. The louder and the brighter, the better. I've actually seen a large number of associations actually do fun runs and fundraising like running. So if you're at all active, you can get a hold of those. They usually sell out pretty quickly, but all sorts of information available in terms of more about Down syndrome and all that sort of stuff across all various websites as well. Happy for any questions. Donna, please add anything else. If I'm missing. Oh, yes, that's also one of the things that happens. Yes.
They sell out pretty quick. Same with the smile cookies. Every time I try to get them, they're sold out.
Yes.
That's a good thing. I don't think it's bad. So, anybody have any questions for Tara?
Oh, I have a question. So at the association level, are there, like things, like activities that are planned at the center? Like, is there like a main place to?
No, it's parent-run volunteer. We don't actually have a center, but we get together. So we usually do like a swimming fun place. We actually usually have our summer picnic. And we've had it at Woodbridge Farms. We've had it at the Missoula Pumpkin Patch. So Pingles and then our Christmas dance and that sort of thing. And we have starting up some other items. Other items.
Here, you always do around World of Founders Day.
Yes, and we usually have something around.
An event where you have a variety of displays and so forth, and talk about Down syndrome and so forth. I mean, it's like in the association, because it's parent run, it's gone through as needed. At one point in time, a long time ago, I was also president of the organization, but anyways, it's at one point in time we did have an executive director, or we managed to, and we actually had sort of a place to offer some services and so forth. But I mean, one is being able to maintain the cost of hiring and staff and so forth. And you rely heavily on basically parents. So we lost the executive director at that time. So it's a strongness of volunteers, but there's always been a very, very strong core of people that keep it running and basically to provide the information and the services to people. When I first found out about it was actually when Victoria was born. At that time, I had a volunteer actually come to the hospital and talk to me. And they actually provided pamphlets in the hospitals, which they no longer do, which is unfortunate, because, it was really, she was surprised. Haven't talked to her in a long time, but it was the most beneficial thing to me is having that connection right away, especially especially when it's a sort of an unexpected birth. The medical profession still treat it. Let's just say that they basically treat your child as, oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah. It's already based on a deficit sort of level when you're talking even with medical professionals, even at that time. So it's an extremely emotional time, especially when you have the first thing your doctors tell you is all the things they're not going to do, right? So, that the faster we get in connections with people around the table that have the experience and the people in the associations, the better I would say that, that child's life and that family's life will be, because they have a support network.
Does anybody else have any questions with respect to that? Or is it
a great presentation. Like, it was very informative. I actually didn't know, like I've actually.
Science.
I know.
I know.
Why it's that day now. I was like, how can you telling people that? This is why it's important.
I actually have a presentation that's actually targeted at children to be able to explain the whole chromosome thing, and it's fantastic. It's actually from another association down in the US. But it's awesome. The way they explain it is the reason why it's so hard is that think of the cell only has this much space in it, and the 46 chromosomes take up this much space. Now add one more thing there and everything's really crowded. So that cell's function, it just makes it that much harder to do something. So a muscle cell, it's so much harder for that muscle cell to do its job. It's so much harder for the brain cell to do its job. It's so much harder for that stomach cell to do its job. So it's you're just crowding everything in there, and it takes time. They can do it. It's just going to take a little longer. And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, this is amazing. This is the best way to describe why it's so hard. And everything is effective.
And that's part of Victoria's presentation. She talks about, her rhythm gymnastics and that, and she demonstrates, one of the things that in one of her routines is rotating the around the hand. And most of the kids are really impressed that she can do this because, it's around her hand. And, but again, that's something that, and she talks about where her friends did that in a short period of time, who also have Down syndrome, but it took her 8 months to achieve that goal, right? So she talks about that, sort of thing. But needless to say, all the kids are usually impressed about the rotating of anything, so.
Fantastic.
How
do you find marketing, like, in terms of getting the word out there? I'm thinking about like community and perhaps even with the mentioned parents, and I was like, what if there are parents who are kind of, that have been exposed or never heard it, or just maybe don't have other supports? So I'm thinking, what do you find works in terms of just getting the word out?
Well, Donna said the same thing, like, it's trying to find them. Where do you find them? My one was actually a pediatrician. He told me about the dermatology institution. So it wasn't in the hospital, but it was pediatrician. So he's been around forever, for a retired student. It's okay. The other one is Grandview as well. There's a Grandview baby group, which is where I met some of the other moms, and we all, oh, your children have syndrome too. Oh, and then you kind of get together, and then somebody knows something, and then you kind of get into that. But it is very hard, I find, to kind of get that word out, especially Durham being so diverse and so, it's so hard at times to find space where you can get together. Like even when I was sort of sitting on the board of everybody as well, just trying to get the board members together because you're from here, trying to find one space that's central because Durham is so large. So it's really hard to kind of get everybody together all the time. Where do you go? Saying, well, if you go north and you go west, so then you have to kind of keep that in mind in terms of, accessibility. And again, it's back to that whole thing as a child, parents with children with special needs, how do you get them where they need to go? They already have 27 other things on the go, 37 different other appointments and sick kids and like Adam, I don't even know how many specialists he's had in his entire life. And it's so routine now when I, tell my mom that Adam's got a specialist appointment, she's like, oh my God, is something wrong? I'm like, no, this is just one of his 37 people. That he's got. Like, it's so routine and so normalized for me, it throws everybody else for a loop. But oh my God, there must be something horrible. I'm like, no, that's just him. So it's very interesting how your barometer changes as well with that. So
thank you. I just want to keep it as a mindfulness to let even care providers produce having it's good to share. Something to share.
Yeah, and that's sort of one of the selfishly, when I joined the SEAC, it was a long time ago, it was for me saying, well, hey, maybe the school system Patrick was terrified to send Adam into the school system because I had no idea what I was in for. Hey, maybe I can control his education here because I can join SEAC. No, that's not what this is. This is about me, and at the end of the day, why I stay is I've learned so much about how to be a good advocate for my child and how the system works and how you navigate the system. So now my function here is how do I pay that forward? Help other parents become better advocates, understand the systems because again, it's that we are a team, like Andrea and everyone around the table said, centered around the child. It's everybody at the table, including the parents, including the staff, including the teachers. And understanding that and how you make that work for you and your child is so important because it's so often so combative and so us versus them. And it shouldn't be, and it doesn't have to be. And you get so much better results when it's an us, all us conversation. So that's sort of what feeds my soul about why I'm still here.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you 100% on that. Like my kids have graduated from university and I'm still sitting here at this table because I can help other parents move forward, help them learn to advocate, be that support, be that voice. And it's this table does such important work, right? Sometimes people misunderstand what this table is, but the advisory part, to me, that's the underlying, right? We're advising, we bring a lot of knowledge. Everybody sitting at this table brings our own knowledge to the table. When you combine that, it's powerful. And it's great, right? And we have that, so. And I think, when we get to our point here, when we, in our agenda, when we do the association reports, like every month, like if your association has something to share, whether it's an event or, sort of just information in general, this is the place, that's the point in the agenda where we're saying any other, association reports. So to say, like, if you have something from your committee or from your association to share, that you feel free to share it, right? You don't have to have a specific line item like we had the Durham Down syndrome. That's that time slot to share things from your association. So, and with that, I will ask if there's anybody else who has any association reports that they want to put forward at this time. Yeah, go ahead.
Office of Ontario, thank you, Lisa actually sent this out earlier, but just so that any listeners can hear. And they are hosting Pathways to Special Education support meet and greet opportunities for families, so families can sign on, learn a little bit more about SEAC. So we've already had a few sessions, but there are a couple remaining left. On November 11th, 14th and 19th that are offered during the day and can be accessible virtually online. So we'd love to see you there. Thank you.
Rowan had sent regrets from the Learning Disabilities Association of Durham Region and has just sent through a flyer for an engagement session. So we will send that out in the follow-up communication to SEAC members as well. Again,
have the dates for that so that we can
Sunday, November 17th from 1 to 3 at the HR's Public Library.
Okay. And is it registration?
All are welcome, no registration will be required.
Excellent. Good. All right. That worked for Rowan. Sorry, anything else? Richard, do you have more? No, that's it. Does anybody have any questions with respect to the association report for Office of Ontario? No? Okay. Moving on to our correspondence, we received a flyer from University of Toronto, the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education, and they are offering a psychological assessments and supports for students. They're asking for students from grades 1 to 12 who have academic challenges at school, from students from culturally or linguistically diverse backgrounds, able to attend weekly sessions, and what they're offering is a complete psychological assessment by a doctoral student. The assessments will look at the students' thinking, learning, and emotional skills. Detailed plans with steps to improve, a 10-week support to help the students, final report for families they can share to schools. The assessment would take place from December to early January. Support sessions will run until the end of April. And very important information on this one is that it is a training program for students. So the fees might be reduced based on what families can afford. And I think that's a key thing, right? Like I was like, that's great to hear that they're doing that. And then there's the information on how to apply for the clinic, a phone number and a website. I'm not sure how we get that out sort of to the broader school community. Overnight. Okay, because where they can contact to get the phone number or the email address for the information for that, because I think that's this would be very.
We'll work with our principal reps and move through the associations and our outreach.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Just a quick question, with respect to the 10 weeks of support, it isn't clear whether or not it's online. If it's downtown Toronto, the OIC campus on Bloor Street, that could be prohibitive for some family members. It would be nice if it was clear whether or not online was an option.
And I think that's one of the reasons why, we need to get the information out there for the website and stuff, like where they can find that information. Parents can look into that in greater detail, because we only have the flyers, right? We don't have any background on it or more details, but if it's something parents are interested in, we want to be able to get them, the link and that kind of stuff so that they can look into it further, right? Because anybody wanting, hoping to do a private assessment knows pretty quickly how expensive they can be, right? So, if this is an opportunity for some families to access something that would normally be prohibitive for them financially, it'd be great for them to get that information. So, any other questions with respect to the correspondence? Okay. Then moving on to community concerns. Is there any community concerns to bring forward at this time? No? Okay, that's good. Celebrations and successes. Sarah?
I have an added story.
Woo! I like added story.
As of less than 2 weeks ago, I have a third adult in the house. Adam turned 18 on October 27th, 2006, and made me a mom. He's very excited. We're gonna go home to Winnipeg for Christmas. So my family's from Winnipeg, so we're gonna go there, and he's very excited. So he's got his Ontario ID card and everything. And speaking about all the transition stuff, Ashley was amazing, helping me and my family through all that. That level of bureaucracy is enough to drive anyone insane. Like, honestly, it needs to be better, but we've all talked around this table multiple times. So he had a great time. We all went to one of his local favorite restaurants with his friends, and everybody there, and had a great old time. Had massive amounts of chicken wings, and that was fantastic. So now he's talking about his 19th birthday already, when he now becomes legal. And I'm already very excited to say about that one, but that would be another story.
Well, I just wrote choked on my water when you said it was 18.
I know.
Yeah, you were right.
I swear he just went into high school last week.
He was 6 when I joined this people. So, that's a long time. A long time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Anybody else have any celebrations and successes to share this time? No? No? Okay. Before we talk about the next SEAC meeting is our organizational meeting. So the board is organizing in November, this month,
November
right?
18th.
November 18th. They're going to put forward their trustees who are going to sit around the SEAC table. And then after the board organizes that next meeting, we organize. So it's really important to have quorum. So I would really implore everybody to make their best efforts to be here for that, because if we don't have quorum, we can't do the organization. We also can't hold a meeting, which means we have to then make up a meeting. And we all know that's not fun, to try and figure out the timing of, right? Because the regulation doesn't, it says 10 meetings a year. It doesn't say you can have you can have if you don't have a quorum, that still counts, like it doesn't count as a meeting if you don't have a quorum. So, so that's our next, SEAC meeting, which is December 5th, right here. And we'll see you all there. We just need a motion for adjournment. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, if I could get the copies of the transition guide back, because it is just draft, and we'll make sure that you get the newer draft, the next SEAC, if you don't. You can keep the event guide, but it's just the transition planning guide, please. Oh, don't consider.
Oh.
And on the affirmation cards, we are trying to leave them places and also take photos. So if a couple SEAC members don't mind gathering, so we can get a photo for our team, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Here you go.
I can never even remember the word, the right heights, you know, how it goes out.
Okay, so, well, Don is going to the cards. Can we have a motion to adjourn? Sarah, seconders, Allison, all in favor?